Hello all, I'm SkyWaveSCS, but that's not important right now as in this episode of Cogs, Gears and Optic Sensors, we're taking a retrospective walkthrough of Transformers issue number 7 from the May of 1985, which opens with this cover of Megatron and Ratchet by the legendary cover artist of issue number 5, Mark Bright, and is scripted by Bob Budiansky and with William Johnson providing the pencils. Our first page gives us this glimpse of a small group on a camping trip, only for a sinister looking shadow to appear in the background, which transpires to be the Autobot medic Ratchet, making a somewhat haphazard entrance, as he not only flattens most of the campsite, but nearly takes the humans out with it. And I do love this last panel of Buster, who states that he understands how a giant talking robot in the middle of the woods can be a bit scary. I'm assuming at this point Buster is pen pals with poor Sammy Harker from the Man of Iron storyline, although at least Ratchet has the courtesy to engage in some dialogue. Over the next couple of pages, we get some of that classic exposition that Transformers stories of the time did really well, with mostly the Autobots, to be fair, being fascinated by the organic life on Earth and the idiosyncrasies of humans, with Ratchet discovering wood, getting to showcase his transformation sequence, although, dare I say, that did make the penciler's job significantly easier for this page. And as Ratchet discovers hot dogs, he even chimes in to try and give the human students some culinary tips on their preparation by means of his laser scalpel. The festivities don't last for long though, as poor Buster succumbs to the effects of what is generously described on the next page as a coruscating beam of energy, when if we are brutally honest, he was tasered by the decapitated head of the Autobot leader. It's thankfully short-lived though, and Buster hitches a lift with his newfound peers and leaves a somewhat concerned Ratchet to ponder his fate as the last Autobot left standing on Earth to face off against the Decepticons. A change of scene now to the Blackrock Aerospace plant as employee Gabe commits a little bit of theft by finding as he takes ownership of a suspiciously brand new yet somehow discarded in the staff car park cassette player, and a quick call back to Shockwave's escapades of the previous issue as we see the heavy duty artillery and armed security personnel protecting the plant. Gabe, however, stashes his latest acquisition in his locker until lunchtime. Readers will know what's coming though, as Soundwave transforms into robot mode, deploying Laserbeak, both having been unwittingly smuggled in by Gabe, and triggers alarms in the control room, leaving two questions for the reader. Just how high is the ceiling in that locker room, and what company has sensors in the changing facilities? Soundwave, however, wastes little time in progressing through the plant, claiming in the name of the Decepticon cause, facing off with GB Blackrock's security teams, who he and Laserbeak make short work of. Gabe, though, decides to clock off early, and I'm not so sure that this is going to look good on his end of year appraisal. But the control room realise that all of their ordnance points outwards, try to call in the military, only to be stopped short by Laserbeak as Soundwave detects the transmission. I do want to take a moment to point out how blue Soundwave is depicted here in the colouring, which was all done by Nel Yontov, which makes purple comic Soundwave all the more intriguing. A scene switch now to Shockwave, who it's revealed was able to furnish Soundwave with the details of the inland facility after his raid on the oil rig, which he's currently occupying, much to the frustration of GB Blackrock, who is probably watching his stock price plummet in real time and vents that he's not beaten just yet. And on that note, neither is Josie Bella, who was critically injured in the previous issue's confrontation with Shockwave, and despite being confined to a hospital bed, has GB Blackrock bringing her in all sorts of experimental tech to assist with her treatment, and both him and Josie pledging to put an end to the robot menace for good. Ratchet, however, having temporarily parted ways with Buster, is skulking around his former base of operations, and most definitely having some thoughts about his current course of action, which is probably not helped by him encountering the strung up Autobots that Buster had previously seen, and just as he counts the prisoners and notices that Optimus is not among them, hoping Prime has freed himself, he encounters the Matrix bearer's head. Buster really could have led with that. But thankfully, Optimus still functions, and tries to rally at Ratchet by convincing him that he could be the warrior that both Earth and the Autobots need right now. Although I'm not convinced that telling him the only way he'll know he's succeeded is if he survives is the best motivational speech that Prime could have given. Buster, though, clearly feeling the stress of events and concerned about his dad's neglected family business, is not convinced that he can run the place on his own, and has no time for O's antics, losing his temper and telling them both to leave him alone. O, it would seem, took this quite literally, as this is the last time we would ever see him in the comics. Perhaps he's retired out to sunnier climates and is running a tiki bar somewhere. However, with the advent of another robo-migraine, Buster ends up channeling his inner X-Men as the objects around him start to float. Ratchet, though, is not having the best day either, as he makes his way through his former base of operations, only to be grabbed as he does so, and given the cover to this issue, he turns to find Megatron, who is looking to scrap another Autobot. A medic puts up a fight though, but when you only rank a 3 on your tech specs for firepower, he's no match for Megatron, even after the Decepticon leader's weakened state from his battle with Shockwave at the end of issue 6. But as Megatron plays with his newfound toy, Ratchet gets an unlikely reprieve in the form of communications from Shockwave, ordering Megatron to start prepping the head of Optimus Prime for transport, and our Autobot medic realizes that he has an in to buy himself some time, with Megatron's despising of Shockwave clearly a bigger driver for him than offlining Ratchet. Our next page, though, is a Megatron-led piece of exposition as the Decepticon leader recounts his departure from Cybertron, all from his perspective, and the reasons that Shockwave stayed behind. And I think it really puts a whole new spin on things when you realise that Shockwave wasn't stranded at all, as he has the ability for self-propelled spaceflight. Shockwave, though, erroneously touches down in the Savage Land, where he encounters the Dinobots sent by the Ark. Ratchet has no idea how they defeated him and strikes a deal with Megatron to finish Shockwave off in return for the captive Autobots. Megatron states that he accepts his terms, which isn't the only time he'll be doing that in Transformers continuity. And with the deal cemented via the right of oneness, which I'm guessing is the Cybertron equivalent of a spit shake, Ratchet realizes that Megatron well and truly has him by the ball bearings, and our closeout box teases the Dinobots. So that's it for issue 7. Now, normally here I'd showcase any extra covers, particularly for the UK book, but unusually this issue was reprinted in its entirety in UK number 26, albeit in a mixture of black and white and full colour. Interestingly, what does exist though is this overlay for Megatron done by artist Herb Trimp, who went over the pencils done by Mark Bright, who I can only assume had used an outdated character model, necessitating the change. So, if you've read this issue, please let me know in the comments. Did you read the black and white UK version or the full colour US one? If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, then please hit like and consider subscribing. If you didn't like it, leave a like anyways. Thanks for watching along, folks, and whatever you do, stay safe.